Okay, I will do that. Thank you, Jessica. Hello, everybody. Very pleased to come and talk to you about my favorite topics of all. We're going to be talking about intimacy, desire, arousal, turn on, all of those things that we seem to start to struggle with a little bit at perimenopause and menopause if it hasn't been an issue before, or they kind of show themselves if they have been an issue before. And the reason that I'm talking about this is my name is Naomi Harris. I call myself the pleasure naturopath. And so I work with women from teenage up to as old as we can get to have beautiful, juicy, turned on bodies that are like healthy and alive for intimacy and sex. So I work with sexual pain, with issues with libido, arousal, desire, orgasm. I work a lot with issues with orgasms, or I've never had one and I want to have one, and just everything to do with this part of the female body.
Yeah, so that's pretty great because we have I think I did tell you this. I've had a few different books recommended to me over the last few
Hmm.
years. Um, and then I get excited, oh, that's great, and pick up the book and then I get into it and it's like there's nothing about menopause. There's nothing
Yeah.
about desire as you're, getting into mid-age or I feel like we get left out of that
Yes. Well,
conversation.
I think it's a very strong belief out there in and society that once we hit perimenopause, we're not even supposed to want to have sex anymore, let alone have bodies that respond sexually. Like, have we ever considered having sex in our 70s and 80s and 90s? Like, it's just almost incomprehensible, but it's a possibility, a juicy, beautiful possibility. And I think you're right, Jessica. We just get left out because I think people can't wrap their heads around the fact that we would want to.
Yeah, but I mean that it's frustrating to think of it for me because I think, well, I mean, you are maturing and moving
Hmm.
into a different part of your life and things are changing, but you're still alive,
Yeah,
and pleasure in
absolutely.
itself, pleasure as a practice is one of the things that I did one of your challenges previously, and that's something I really noticed is that my mind would say, I'm having pain
Hmm.
because I've had endometriosis and I did have
Mm.
surgery and that was brilliant. It was great. I'm glad that I did. But
Hmm.
leading up to that, I had a lot of just body pain and pelvic pain, and the mind says, well, there's no point in doing your pleasure homework because you're in pain. But I'm a musician, and you do it anyway. Practice is just you just practice. You do your practice, and then you learn whatever it is you learn. And I thought, wow, this is really the news flash that needs to go out into the universe is that you can have body pain and still have pleasure.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
even that, after my practice, my pain had gone down quite considerably. Just
Hmm.
from, I thought, like, just from reminding my body, you're still all the way alive.
Absolutely.
Not just the pain and struggle, but also the pleasure and enjoyment.
And the other thing that you can have is immense amounts of of pleasure, even if your mind doesn't immediately go, woohoo, we're having sex. Even
Yeah.
if your mind goes, oh no, not this again, there's still so much pleasure available once we kind of get into that groove of it. So,
Mm.
absolutely, there is pain healing, but also pleasure finding in connecting to ourselves.
Yeah, and with your partner, if you have your partner, but maybe you
Hmm.
don't have a partner. I've had a few women say that to me, well, it's not really relevant to me, but you still have a body.
Hmm.
Your body's still designed for pleasure and you're still alive, so you might as well enjoy yourself as much as you can while you're here. And solo practice is a part of it, I think, as far as coming to understand what has changed.
Mm, absolutely. Actually, Jessica, should we talk about that for a little bit? Because I think there's some really important things that we need to consider with these bodies as they change. Because I think we get quite focused on the hormones. Oh, my hormones are changing, and therefore these things are happening.
Hmm.
And there's a bunch of different things that I want to say. And the first is that I think the concept of vaginal atrophy or thinning of the vaginal tissues and the vulvar tissues or changes to the vulva and vaginal tissues is not going to be a shocking new concept to anybody who is watching this. And what I will say is the most effective way that we can keep ourselves plump and juicy and our tissues intact and strong and resilient is with touch, with ongoing touch. And self touch, caring self touch on a daily basis actually keeps our tissues plump, juicy, and healthy. And so if atrophy or if tissue changes are one of the things that anybody watching this is starting to go through, I would highly recommend, even it doesn't have to be sexual touch,
Mm-hmm.
getting some really lovely oil, and if you can eat it, then put it on your vulva. It's kind of like if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on that part of your body. Coconut oil can be problematic for some women, so jojoba or something is a lovely one. And just massage your tissues gently, especially if you have pain or if you already have atrophy or the tissues are delicate or you have bleeding or anything, go gently. And gentle touch every day will bring blood flow, it will bring pleasure, it will bring sensation, and it will start to make things juicy and plump again. It's entirely possible. And wet. If wetness and dryness is one of the issues that you're working with as well, daily touch can bring back that wetness. In fact, it
Mm-hmm.
will if you stick with it. If you commit yourself to doing that every day.
Mm-hmm. And that's like I just kind of put that under like for the self-care part of things. This is
Mm-hmm.
just something that I'm doing to take care of myself and experiment to see, how things work. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the anatomy class that you did.
Uh-huh.
Some of the diagrams of the internal system
Mm.
was so much more detailed and
Yeah.
informative than any of the information because I did anatomy and physiology and pathology
Yep.
at the university that's down the street from my house.
Yep.
And yeah, we got just really very basic information and
Yeah.
almost nothing about menopause.
No. And actually, thank you for reminding me because I wanted to say as well, you said something, I can't remember your exact words, but it was something about um, changes to pleasure or changes to this part of the body. And this is actually a really important thing to realize as well, is that when we are having tissue changes to our vulva and vagina, what has been our kind of habitual, our habit pleasure pathway of if I touch this and if I rub this and if I then do this and this and this and this, I'm going to get to an end result that I'm looking for. And then our tissues start to change. And all of a sudden, if we rub this and touch this and do that, it's not happening the same way. And then we're like, well, then there's something wrong with me, and this part of my life is done, or I'm broken, or I go to the doctor and the doctor's like looking at me like I'm crazy, like, why would I care? But the truth is that and like you said, like the complexity of our pleasure systems, we seem to have got a little bit stuck with the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings and, da 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 da. There are so many pleasure points of possibility in our genitals. And what can happen with menopause and perimenopause is as the tissues are all changing, we have to go on a treasure hunt and relearn our bodies because what has been our habit and what we're used to doing might not be the thing anymore, but there's still possibility waiting for us. We just have to go looking for it slowly and gently and giving our body time to respond and wake up to see what actually is possible in there.
I think that's a really good point of giving your body time. Like that was one
Yeah.
of the things that came up when I first started looking into like what is going on and the difference between spontaneous desire
Mm-hmm.
and responsive desire,
Mm-hmm.
and that you don't just because you're not really thinking about it doesn't mean that you wouldn't get interested if there was some, very pleasurable activity and no pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Jessica, I'm going to say something that may not be a very popular thing for me to say. And I've had some pushback about this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I feel like it's true. When we have a partner and physical intimacy is an important kind of cornerstone of our relationship, we know that it matters. It matters to them, it matters to me, it matters to the relationship between us. Sometimes physical intimacy is a mental choice rather than a waiting for my body to go, oh, actually, yes, that would be nice. Sometimes it's a mental choice of, it's been X number of days. I'm missing them. I want to connect with them. Tonight's the night. And I know once I start, if we go slow and if the situation is right, that my body is going to wake up and respond, and I'm going to get the payoffs that come from it. But if I wait for like the kind of spontaneous desire to happen, or any desire, like any mental desire to happen, after I've done the to-do list and the kids have sorted out, or like everything else that I've got going on, it's never going to happen.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just a choice of going, you know what, it matters. And this is a choice I'm making.
Yeah, and
We're
this is
taught,
important.
because we're taught this Hollywood belief about spontaneous sexual attraction now. It's supposed to be this fiery hot thing where we're banging each other up against the kitchen counter when the kids are in bed, and it's like, who does that after so many years together?
Hmm.
But physical intimacy is so important that it actually is worth going, I'm going to commit in my own mind that we're going to be intimate every X number of days. And that on those, I don't even have to tell my partner that. I'm just going to choose. On those days, something's going to happen. And it doesn't have to be penetration, but some kind of intimacy is going to happen because it's worth it.
Yeah, I've heard that a bit with like feedback from people in my group and that I've helped with coaching, where that idea of penetration as what it is, like that's what it is, and then everything we do is leading up to that. And if there isn't
Exactly.
that, then I
It's
had,
not sex,
yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah.
I had one woman who was saying, she's lesbian and that's not important to her at all. But there's all kinds of other activity that's really important that I think can kind of fall by the wayside if we're just
Yeah,
busy and trying to get through a chore and do another thing that we got to deal with today and try and keep our
exactly.
marriage on track, or deal
Yep.
with the pressure that that sometimes is external. And honestly, it's hard, I think, for the guys, if you're in a heteronormative relationship like I am.
Mhm.
um, it was hard for my partner to understand that, you know it was a big change for me, that everything was kind of
Yeah.
different. And he, of course, couldn't see any, it was the same for him. But I had to honor that about myself and realize that it's okay to take some time and, change my mind and do something
Hmm.
else, or,
Yeah.
but that is actually just a choice that you make, that this is important to me. So I'm going to
Yeah.
invest the
Yeah.
time and energy. And I'm just so happy that you're willing to come and talk to us about it, because it's pretty
Mm.
discouraging that I can't find like a good. There's lots of information about human sexuality and there's lots of good books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, the menopausal woman is just kind of left out of that discussion. And I do think that there's that idea that we're just supposed to not do that anymore.
Shriv Shrivel up and, yeah, not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, on what you just said, Jessica, one of the things I love to do when the partner, so I work one on one with women, and when they have a partner and the partner is willing, I love homework, home play, and to give home play that is opening up the idea of physical intimacy between them without a penetration focus. And in fact, with a lot of the home play, I'm like, this is a non-penetration activity. You can have penetration if you wish to, but
Yeah.
I want you to finish the activity, have a full stop, get up, get off the bed, come back onto the bed, and then do whatever you wish to do. Because it's really important that we learn about what physical intimacy, the possibility of physical intimacy. And like you said, if we just have this, I need to do this, do that, do that, do that, then there's a penis inside me and then it's done, we're missing out on so much. And to be honest with you, I also ask a lot of women because they're like, what is this sex thing now with my perimenopause, menopausal body? And the question often is it that you don't want to be having sex anymore? Or is it that you don't want to be having the sex that you're having? And if it's the second, what can we do about that? And how can we bring juiciness back in, or in if it's never been there, in a way that actually serves you and fills your tank and makes you feel good to be alive in this body?
Yeah, I had one woman ask a question recently. It was basically along the lines of, I've been faking it this whole time, been married a long
Right.
time,
Right.
and I have no desire to tell my partner that
Yes.
this is what's been going on. But, you know, dissatisfaction, avoidant behavior, not wanting to be that way,
Of
trouble now, tension
course.
in the relationship because she's not
Yep.
interested anymore.
Yep.
And, what kind of steps could she take? And I don't even think I answered because I was like, I don't know beyond telling them what you're actually experiencing.
Yeah. I have had clients who have been married for over 30 years, over 40 years. And I'm thinking of one particular client, and when she came to me, she'd never had an orgasm. And she had been married with her partner for over 30 years. And she also, because of the weight of that, to say to somebody, oh, by the way, for the last 30 years, I've been pretending, like there's so much weight to that.
Yeah.
And so we worked through it and we talked about it. And she learned how to relate to her own body. And she learned that she was extremely orgasmic, extremely orgasmic. So then, when that possibility opened up for her, a real possibility opened up for her, it just kind of merged into her sex life, which then she wanted more of. And she didn't actually need to have the conversation of, oh, by the way, for the last 30 years, it hasn't been my thing.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of the work that I do is how do we communicate our needs and desires in a way that for both parties to feel met and heard and seen, and nobody to walk away feeling frustrated or judged, and that's a really big part of it, especially in these long-term relationships as well, or maybe not even especially in the new ones as well. How do you tell a new lover that, by the way, what you're doing isn't working for me, and I know what works for me if you would just listen to me? So how do we have those conversations?
Yeah, that just what popped into my mind is boundaries again. I'm, big fan of
Yeah.
thinking about it in terms of like this far, no farther, what a
Yep.
boundary actually looks like, it that it can move, that it could change and be different depending on the
Absolutely.
day or the person or what's going on for you personally.
Yep.
And so that level of honesty and the vulnerability of coming to a person and saying, I just need, I don't know, like an example would be for me, like I just need more time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's so, oh, so much to talk about, Jessica.
I
So,
know.
so one thing that I would say is one thing I think is happening, and again, like, where's the literature about this? It's go hunting for it if you can. But from my observation and from what I've been sensing, is what I think often is happening at perimenopause and menopause with sex in a relationship, especially, is that because of the changes to our brains, the hormonal changes to our brains, we can't pretend anymore. Like we're just not willing. We're all getting to the point because I'm also perimenopause, and we're just getting to the point where it's like, no, I'm actually just not going to pretend anymore. I'm not putting up with this anymore. And we could make the list of all the things we're not putting up with anymore. But this is one part of our lives. It's just like, no, actually it's not good enough and it never has been good enough, or it was good enough and it's not anymore, and now we need to do something about it. And one of the things that it starts to get really apparent is we need time for our arousal pattern and for our bodies to respond. And we are not men if we're having sex with men. We are not immediate erection and we're ready to
Yeah.
go. We can be 45 minutes to an hour before our bodies are even ready for penetration. And so, if penetration is the whole purpose of sex, but we need a whole hour to get there, that's another like mess in our brains that we have to sort out and that we have to communicate with our partners as well. And hopefully, we have a partner who sees the worth in that kind of physical intimacy together, that it takes this long, or we
Hmm.
work out what. So it's such a complex part of our lives, but it's also an important part of our lives in working this all out and making it work.
And I think it's a very worthwhile if you want to
Hmm.
stay married. Like that comes up a
Hmm.
lot of times where a lady would be like, I'm just not into it, so I don't want to. And he should understand that. And like that should be the end of the conversation. But
Hmm.
from my perspective, I look at it like a renegotiation, because if you've been in a relationship with someone for a long time, and I don't know, you've always cooked dinner, or
Yeah.
they've always done the grocery shopping, or whatever those roles are and responsibilities, and how the couple comes together, and then you're going to take something. It would be the same thing as him coming home and he's always made Sunday dinner for the whole family,
Yeah.
just saying, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Everybody's on
Yeah.
their own for dinner. You would
Yeah.
have feelings about that. And it's
Absolutely.
just Sunday dinner. It's not, as one of the ways that I put it to people is like, I don't feel that your needs for intimacy are the kind of thing that you can just put on the shelf. Like, some things
Yeah.
maybe aren't all that important, but because it's more of a drive, even though you're not
Yeah.
going to die if you don't have pleasure in your life, it's not fatal, right? Like, you have to eat, you have to drink water, you have to
Yeah.
move your body. These things are not negotiable. But it's also not the kind of thing that you can just say, well, I'm not going to do that, and it doesn't come up
Yeah.
somewhere else in some weird way, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're pretending that it's not important to you, but your body's sending you these messages,
Exactly.
that's
Yes.
going to come up in some weird way.
And so, one question that I often ask clients to go away and think about in our first or second session is like, first of all, what is sex? Because it starts to get a bit more interesting when we can start to define this outside of sex is having something inserted into my body, but what actually is sex? And the second thing is, what does sex mean to me? And what does it mean to me in the concept of my relationship? And again, this may be an unpopular thing to say. And I would say that this goes both ways because there's possibly going to be women listening to this in your groups who are like, yeah, but I'm the one who wants all the sex and my partner doesn't want it anymore. Because this is also a
Mm-hmm.
reality,
Yep.
a big reality.
Yep.
Because for some women, this is the time of life where things start to wake up, and it's
Yep.
like all of a sudden I want it all the time, and my partner's like, no, we were in a groove of this not being part, like what's going on? And so it actually goes both ways for both parties. If we're in a monogamous relationship and we're asking our partner to be monogamous with us, we do have an obligation to show up in some physical way for physical intimacy because, like you said, we won't die if we don't have pleasure and we don't have intimacy, but it does have a cost. There is a price to pay for turning off that part of our lives. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody where I feel like we're housemates. This is important to me. This is my choice. I don't want to be housemates with my partner. I want to be lovers with my partner until the end of our days for whatever that looks like, whatever the definition of that is.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, again, like how can we even define what the juice that this brings into our relationship? And actually getting really clear on that in our own minds can help motivate us to do something about it because we start to go, oh, sex isn't just an orgasm. Sex is physical intimacy. Sex is
Mm-hmm.
oxytocin. So I feel connected. Sex is knowing that this person is my person because we're the only two people who do this thing with each other. Sex is being completely safe and relaxed and comfortable with this person. Sex gives a flavor to the next 3 days where I can just kind of feel it in my nerve endings that we've just done it. And they slap me on the ass a little bit more when I'm walking past, or I just look at them in the bathroom. I'm like, wow, look at that. Whatever it is, it brings us a lot as humans because we are kind of creatures. We're mammals. We have these kind of mammalian needs. Our bodies have needs, our psyches have needs. And so being really honest with ourselves about what is it bringing me and what will it cost if it goes away can help with the motivation to have it.
Yeah, and even just what you said about being relaxed. I remember
Mhm.
a few years ago, I was having a lot of endometrial pain,
Mm.
and I had like a long weekend, and I binge watched a dumb show on Netflix, and it was about the Chippendales. It's a ridiculous story, how it
The,
came
the
about.
the strip group.
Yeah, yeah, the
Yep.
Chippendale,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
male strip, how that
Yeah.
actually came about, who came up with the idea, and how it evolved. It was fascinating because there was a lot
Yeah.
about like business and relationships and
Yep.
sexuality, and had these beautiful men dancing. And I watched the whole thing over the weekend, and then I realized, after I'd finished the whole thing, like whatever the series was, that it kind of took me that whole time to get to that place of feeling relaxed and
So
happy
interesting.
and interested, because I was like, oh, from the body pain, I'm having this just residual kind of tension all the time,
Yeah.
and I can't really get to that place of happy and relaxed. And yeah, my husband was like, oh goodness, if that's what it takes, right? Like, how many series are there that are like that, that are that specific, that like tick all
Yeah,
these
yeah,
boxes for me, that I would
yeah,
be interested enough to watch the whole thing. Thankfully, once the body pain came down, and working with my
yeah,
own body and all of those things that
yeah.
I did with you, and learning more and being. I'm very fortunate in that I'm very close with my husband. He's my bass player, and
Oh,
we got to this point where it was like, when you're in a band with someone, you have to work together, and
mm-hmm.
everybody has very, defined roles of what that
Yeah,
looks like. And there's like a camaraderie that you have with someone that you play music with that doesn't come along in just naturally in a relationship that you might have with someone else. But eventually I turned to him and I said, man, we got to stop like being bandmates, because I'm calling you
yeah,
bro, and I'm thinking that
yeah,
you're my dude, and we're
yeah.
pals, which is great. It's wonderful to have that part, that way of connecting with each other. But we also have to remember and, remind ourselves and talk to each other, so I'll often call him lover.
Beautiful. Yes. And it's so important. Yeah. Because if we only think about our partner in terms of the rest of the things that they provide, husband, father, wife, mother, whatever it is that they're
Mm-hmm.
bringing, it doesn't open up the erotic very easily. And what you said, Jessica, is really, really important about it taking a whole weekend to relax. I'm so glad that you named that because it's also a reality and a truth. We want our bodies to respond sexually and we want to be juicy with turn on. We want to get wet, we want to get aroused, we want to be ready for sex if that's what we want. And we are walking around in bodies that are so overstretched and overstimulated. We have so much going on. And the truth is that we're often having sex with people who are also overstretched and overstimulated and have too much going on. And so there's these two overstimulated, overstretched nervous systems coming together, expecting to be able to be intimate. But our female, this beautiful female body actually needs to relax and calm down and be present in order to feel aroused and desire. And so that's why it's really, really hard to jump from ticking off the to-do list to immediately being sexual and feeling pleasure. Which is why, like a bridging activity or something could be good, but there's more than that that's needed. And it really, that whole weekend on the couch is beautiful because it really shows us, especially with something like pain, where I mean, it's also intimate pain. I don't know if you said you had pain during penetration or during intimacy, but when we're working with something like that, or we have tissue atrophy, or we have changes in our genitals, and then we have to work with the fear of that in our minds, or what our head's telling us about ourselves because of that. And then we have to work through our nervous system still jangling from our to-do list and everything else. And that argument that we had with our partner 3 decades ago that we never spoke up about, but is still resentment is simmering there underneath. And all these things kind of have to be sorted out in our bodies so that our bodies can finally go, ah, and
Yeah.
melt and open and be sensual. And so it can take a lot. And we're so hard on ourselves because we think 45 minutes is too long to feel turned on. Like 45 minutes is a miracle if we really think about it with everything else we've got going on.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point about giving yourself a break,
Yeah.
where there's so much going on with, if you, even if you just look at symptoms and how disruptive the symptoms can be, and you're managing that and maybe trying to find someone to help you, and that kind of feels like a part-time job. I have a friend who's got some chronic illness, and we kind of joke that having that is a part-time job, because you're
It really is.
going from here to
Yeah.
there to this doctor and trying to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what's going on until you find something
Yep.
that helps. But in the land of pelvic pain, I would say I was really fortunate because I already knew all of this stuff
Yeah.
from the wonderful people that I've talked to, and my physiotherapist, when I was talking to her about my hip pain and my low back. said, "Oh, and if you ever have any pelvic pain, I also am a pelvic floor, so
Oh,
come and see me." And so the first time it was an issue, even remotely, I was like in her office the next day, getting
beautiful.
it dealt with, and she was able to
Yeah.
point me in the direction of what our mind says, that things are too loose and we're, losing our whatever, our ability to respond. And the what was happening for me anyway was the opposite. I had muscles that were way too tight that
Yes.
had to be
Yeah.
worked at. But she showed me what to do, and I did my homework because that's what you got to do. You got to do your
Yeah.
homework, right? Like, that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
think for me, it was only like 2 or 3 sessions, and then it was resolved. But I wasn't. I would never hesitate to do that again, and I recommend that. I had this come up just recently where someone was saying, "But my extended healthcare is not really very good coverage, so I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that they would cover that." But my understanding, well, at least with mine, it's just under physiotherapy. So
Okay.
it's covered
Yeah.
if you have extended healthcare.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
everybody does. So that's kind of, another conversation of how accessible all of this stuff is. But if you were going to
Very true.
invest in something, investing in
Mm-hmm.
that is a huge, you're going to get your money's worth, I feel, rather than, because once you have pain, you might start avoiding, and then you have other
Yeah.
relationship issues and even
Yeah.
problems like hating your own body. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, I just had someone in the group talking about having needed a hysterectomy and
Yes.
really happy that there won't be any more unexpected bleeding once she heals from the
Mm-hmm.
surgery. But having the feelings come up about, now
Mm-hmm.
am I still a woman because I don't have a uterus and I've had this surgery?
Yeah.
I'm surgically altered and I have to do the
Yeah.
the therapies, even though, maybe I wouldn't have if I hadn't needed to have that surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a big deal. I think, it's one of those medical procedures that I think are offered quite casually to a woman to have a hysterectomy. And I know for some that it is a life-changing experience, a positive life-changing experience, and it can remove a lifetime of issues and pain and bleeding. And for others, unfortunately, it doesn't help or it makes things worse. And I think it actually comes back to, and I think also, Jessica, I was just thinking when you were sharing about that, this is also the time of life for a lot of women where we come to terms with we're not going to have any more or any children. Like this is a change point. And
Yes.
so who are we as a woman? Like, are we still women if we're not bleeding and we're not fertile and our one of our possible roles on this planet is no longer part of our lives? And who are we then? And I think that's also one of the reasons why this can be such a massive transition, such a massive crossroads for us. And I think it comes back to the same thing that everything does, as far as I can tell, which is our own relationship with our own body. And even, with all of these things, even with the heartache, for example, with this woman that you were speaking about who says, well, who am I now without the womb? Like, she does need to work through her own mind and her own beliefs
Yeah.
and like her stories and things around it, and coming to terms with it through her body and making friends with her body and building up respect and building up trust between her and her body. And that goes for all of us, building up trust and respect and love between our minds, our beings, and our bodies is actually a fundamental to absolutely anything that we would like to do at this point of life or at any time of life. And it's actually the fundamental underpinning of everything that I do with women, no matter what they come to me with, which is how much are you in touch with your own body? How much do you talk to her? How much do you touch her for anything other than medical or hygiene reasons? How often do you actually look at her in the mirror and go, oh, okay, this is the vehicle that I get to travel through this life with. Is this a privilege, or am I too busy beating myself up about my perceived flaws to actually pay attention? Our poor bodies get so much from us. We are so cruel, unsympathetic,
Yeah.
unkind to ourselves. And it can start with something so simple as a hand on the vulva and a hand on our hearts and just I haven't listened to you for the last 50 years, but let's give it a go and try now. And then nothing happens. And we go, okay, but I'm coming back tomorrow with a hand on the vulva and a hand on the heart. And I'm going to give it a go. And then nothing happens, but I'll come back tomorrow and I'll come back tomorrow and I'll come back tomorrow until finally go, oh, I think I just felt some kind of connection between myself and myself. And then things can unfold from there. And that's, fundamentally the most powerful thing that I think we can do as women. I've had clients come to me. I have a podcast. I'll tell you a little about it because it has a lot of resources. And in one of the podcasts, I talk about this practice, hand on the vulva and hand on the heart. And she came to me and then she signed up a while later to work with me. And she said, I've been doing it and it's changed everything. And I said, yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing practice of being in touch with ourselves.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
accepting what is there, and then
Yes,
you know
exactly.
going with how you feel about what's happening. And I do remember when we did the pleasure challenge, someone
Yep.
was really worried about, because you did instruct us to do that gentle hold,
Yes.
um, and she was automatically like, it's gonna hurt.
Yes.
I've had that pain before, and
Yep.
worried about like what we have
Yep.
to do next, right? Like what's the next, and then
Exactly.
so relieved that it was like, well, there is no next step.
This
You're
is
just gonna
it.
hold yourself
Yeah.
and let whatever feelings come up, and be your
Yeah.
own friend about whatever, if there is a negative memory, or
Yep.
maybe something that you've
Exactly.
longed for that you haven't had, or those kind of things. It was really, I hadn't I've been very, very lucky in that I've had, mostly in my adult life, good experiences with other people.
Good.
And I haven't had a lot of pain that way at all, ever. But I hadn't realized how, like, terrifying it would be
Yeah.
to do a simple practice if you've had pain.
Absolutely. It can be so terrifying. I have clients who we work together long term, and it's only towards the end of our time together where they finally go, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And we have to kind of work our way there down the winding
Yeah.
road of working it through because, like with full compassion, our bodies have been through so much. And it can be the scariest thing in the world to actually stop and pay attention and go, oh, okay, that was my life experience. And
Yeah.
it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And it didn't feel like I was told it was supposed to feel. And my childhood set me up badly for possibility. And, like there can be so much in there that we need to uncover.
Hmm.
And so, of course, we have to go slowly. And of course, not pushing against the limitations. And pain is like, we don't push against it. We stay with it. We hold it. We send love and listen to the
Listen.
pain.
Yeah, like the one that
Or
drives me
to,
nuts is when the doctor's like, well, just grin and bear it, or it's important to your marriage, so just
no,
put up with it. It's like, ah,
oh
no,
God,
don't.
it's the worst.
Oh,
You
jeez.
owe your partner to drink a bottle of wine so that you don't notice what's happening. It's terrible. It's just awful that we would even consider saying that to another person when
Yeah.
there's so much possibility, like so much positive alternative to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're going to share with us your podcast, and
Oh,
do you
yes.
have something else that you've got coming up too, or are you doing an offering?
So, let me tell, I've got the pleasure files. So my podcast is called the Pleasure Files, and I try to make them, I have a lot to say, as you can probably tell, I have so much to say on all of these topics, but I try to make them as accessible as possible. So little 20, 25 minute chunks. I have one on communication with your partner if you need to have the hard conversation. I've got I think, a two-part series on women's nervous systems and why it can be so hard to get aroused in our bodies and what we can do about it. I try to make it useful and resourced. So, are you going to put any links, Jessica? We didn't talk about this.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, whatever, anything you've got to offer. So when I take the video and I put it into the School of
yep,
Perimenopause, then I can do like a little description with like links of different things, whatever you want to
beautiful.
send people, and then they can just click and learn more, or
Okay,
just listen to the podcast, or whatever
great.
they want to do,
Yep.
right?
And in the Facebook group, you can just click on my name, and I have a link in my bio, and it has a link to that podcast, so you can find that out as well. And
And ask
otherwise,
her questions, you guys. Like if you have questions that we didn't
oh,
cover.
please ask
Yeah.
questions. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I love it. I love nothing more than an excuse to talk more about anything to do with this. And also, oh, I'm very, very happy to have free chats as well, like completely obligation free. If anybody's listening is like, you know what, I actually think it's time to have a talk about what's going on in my
Yeah.
body or my genitals or sex or any of that. I'm very, very happy to have a chat and give you whatever little bits that I can in that short amount of time and explain to you how I work and all of that as well.
Yeah, and it makes a really big difference, I think, because when you were talking about, the message that we've gotten is basically just put up and shut up and let
Yeah.
it go to the wayside.
No.
I feel like it's a lot of the same, yeah, this is the intimate area of our lives, but it's the same as everything else where we're doing a reevaluation of where we're putting our
Yeah.
energy and how much work we're doing in different relationships and if that's really coming back and setting boundaries. And this is just an extension of that where
Yeah.
maybe previous generations did just give up on being intimate after going through
Yeah.
menopause. But we
Yeah.
certainly don't need to do that. That doesn't
No.
have to happen at all, and probably, be happier. Like, I wish one of the things I would say if you're going to do the pleasure challenge again, it would be wonderful. I wish I had done like an evaluation on my just general level of satisfaction in my life, not just around sexuality,
Before and
but
after. Yeah.
before and after. Because I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
feel like after I was just
Yeah.
enjoying a lot more of, like, the other things that
Yeah.
were going on was more enjoyable too, because I was more tapped into noticing what I was
Yeah.
enjoying and looking for things to enjoy in my life instead of
Beautiful.
that negativity bias.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so, oh, thank you, Jessica, for naming that. It's really, I think I'm just going to add this. I think often, like, sex does become a chore, and we do think we're doing it for the other person. Like we have to do this because whatever reason that we're giving ourselves, but we do get reward from pleasure. This animal that we're walking around in really does light up from physical pleasure. And so it is a gift to ourselves as well when we we can, like you said, we can walk away from it and let it shut down and you know get on with our lives, but there are so many rewards available when we're
Mm-hmm.
here with this body.
Yeah, and thank you for helping women in perimenopause. It's another thing that I was thinking when I did the math and realized, okay, so if so many of us are over 45, that means that this
Yeah.
many people, and it's like, I think in Canada, the estimated is like 2.5 million women right now are probably going through perimenopause.
Wow.
That's a lot of people who
Yeah.
are not feeling good and maybe
Yeah.
having illness type symptoms and not not being enjoying their lives or having pleasure on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
if we can help that area of population, that's going to help because all of those women are working jobs and taking care of kids and dealing with elder care and
Yeah.
volunteering, and we're a pretty important cog in the wheel of
Yeah.
what keeps
Yeah.
families moving and things together. So for us to be,
Exactly.
not top shape,
Yeah.
it's a sad
Not
situation for
yeah.
everybody.
Not filling our own tanks. And pleasure is one way that we can fill our own tanks. So we're not constantly giving from an empty bucket because that's what
Yeah.
we're often doing.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think we could get away with that, in the 20s and 30s. We had enough happy hormones
Yeah.
going on that it was like, well,
Yeah.
whatever, I'll just put my stuff to the side for right now and get back to that later. And it maybe didn't cost us to the same extent
Yeah.
as it does now.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay,
It
so is there
shows up
anything else
more.
you want to show and like talk about or share with us?
Oh, I think probably 100 things, but I think that's a nice start for now, at least.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
covered a lot of bases, and thank you
Yeah.
for mentioning the podcast. And I know that there are yeah, I'll take your link also and put it because I have like a podcast in the collections that is just like recommended podcasts.
Oh, great.
So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I can put
Yep.
up your link there, and that'll make it easier for people to find you. Like even if they don't necessarily find you this way, they'll find
Yep.
you just in the podcast because certain people really
Absolutely.
love learning from podcasts. They've had a few now.
Absolutely.
Where I was like, "How did you learn so much?" And they were like, "I just listen to
Oh,
podcasts
oh, yeah.
every day."
And I happily take requests for podcast topics. So if
Mm-hmm.
there's anything that you want me to just talk about for 20, 25, 30 minutes, I would love it because I'm asking my community often for recommendations. So
Yeah,
Yes.
you get a lot of ideas that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. Short notice or whatever the takeaway is. Contact. I'm happy to talk about anything, midlife wise as well.
Yep.
I am
Yes.
married to a person that I've been with for almost 30 years, so we've
Beautiful.
decided to we had frank discussions about what was important to us and staying together, but happily staying
Yes.
together was really important to
Yes.
us, right? More than
Good.
just let's compromise and stay together even if we're not happy.
Yes.
And so I am able to speak on that. And then Naomi's really good if you
Beautiful.
actually have any kind of pain or like a very serious question, or maybe you just want to make sure that you're talking to someone who has that experience of helping so many different women in different situations
Yep.
with their intimate lives. Naomi's really open and loving and kind, and she's not going to judge you.
Yes.
I've said all
None.
kinds of things to
Yeah.
Naomi, and she's not like,
Oh,
oh, I can't believe you said that. No, she knows.
Jessica, sometimes I'm like, I think I've heard it all. And then occasionally I'm still like, oh,
Woo!
okay, that's a new one. But honestly, I think I might have actually heard just about everything at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah,
So I really don't get flustered and I really don't judge. We're all
yeah.
doing the best we can.
No, and humans are mammals, and mammals are weird. So there you go.
Exactly. I like it.
All right. Okay. So I'm gonna end the call, and then
Hmm.
I'll put this talk up in the School of Perimenopause. It'll be live,
Yeah,
but I have a feeling that it might get taken down from Facebook because we of the language that we're using.
I know.
But then it'll still be accessible on the school. So
Yes.
that's another
Okay,
good
good.
reason for having that. And thank you so much for
Yes.
coming.
Thank you. It was
Yeah.
fun. Thanks,
Oh, thanks
Jessica.
so much. We'll talk again soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.